beautiful ladies, and wonderful men. Welcome back. To tell you can do one thing is good, but it is just an introduction to a reality you may not have known, but to show you why the thinking behind it is better. Because you now know the mentality that the ones on the other hand are carrying as they put eyes on the ink and paper you place in front of them. We'll do that latter part, not by assumption, but by showing you what they themselves have placed into legislature's guideline that is available for millions of people to read and comprehend, and subsequently used as pathway to see what the playing field is like. There's no good in jumping into the gratifying part if you don't know why it works and how to avoid pitfalls. Because if you haven't realized it, people actually go to prison and jail for not knowing the things we're about to show, because if you lack these thinking method in your own mind as to the playing field, what you're doing on pen and paper may be easily considered laundering. Grant is that of money in the case of what we're speaking of. And there are guidelines that if you don't follow it, it is as though you are taking monies to be used for improper purpose for personal use. The art of war lets us know that finance is important, and it is a huge part of warfare. Warfare is a strategy behind the physical act where people slay one another. War is the act of physical destruction of things. The direct battle. Warfare is the planning and thinking behind what makes the physical battle victorious. The Spartans were masters of warfare. So they, despite their small numbers, were victorious over others who had advanced technologies and numbers than they. Warfare is awareness of the playing field, and the art of war also let us know that you must know your terrain. This brings us back to the thinking behind the thing, rather than the thing itself. See, with pen and paper, the warfare is the thinking behind why those sets of words were put in black and white. Lack of knowledge of this thinking is no different than a general, you, the architect of that pen and paper, not knowing how to assemble, organize, and direct his soldiers. The soldiers being each and every word on those pieces of paper that you send out there to go accomplish a desired outcome, a mission for you. Your soldiers are your words. Your weapons are your words. That's why they say, let your sword be your words. And your victories and losses are highly determined by words, especially in the world of money. Words do in fact create reality. And when you have an intent to obtain grant, in simplicity to those who know how it works, it summarily is just the use of words to have resources handed to you. That's really it at the end of the day. That's what grants are. Just the use of words to have someone give you money. That's as simple as that. But if you don't know the terrain, how can your words, which are your soldiers, and the cause of victory or defeat, how can those words, your resources, how can they serve you? Some may think of it from the perspective that this is merely just a grant and nothing important, so why the similitude of war being used? Beautiful people, if anyone had not told you before, here it is. Business is war. The matter of monies is war. And the foundation of the United States and its subsidiaries are warlike. I'm not sure if you've ever looked into United States, what they did, what they are doing, what they are planning, but it's warlike. So they think in such manner and organize their own words similarly. So whenever you're interfacing with them, you must know the nature of this thing. this beast. If you are skipping from rainbow and unicorn land and you see a pile of gold ahead of you and don't realize there are mines on your way to it, and you think the pile of gold is the same as the one the leprechaun handed you on the cushy moss and beautiful grass, then you may be slightly delusional. Again, remember, these monies called grants, as have been mentioned in prior videos, are attached to very certain performance based on what type of grant they are. And there are federal laws and federal regulation. In this case, we are reading Code of Federal Regulation. Title 2. There are regulation and laws on a federal level that says if someone lies on their grant and don't use it for the stated purpose, they are to be punished. Simple as that. But if you know that in mind and you abide by it truthfully, then it doesn't have to be doom and gloom. At the end of the day, you must meet certain criteria, which, believe it or not, you have been prepared for. If you have been keeping track of videos of 508 business and trusts, you have a decent amount of awareness in your mind as to how to make this work. There are three main noun-like words used through these codes of federal regulation. They refers to positions. First is the term non-federal entities, quote unquote, non-federal entities. Know that that refers to you. Second is the term pass-through entities. Pass-through entities. Know that it refers to third parties that first takes monies from federal level and then hands it to entities and people, such as the state Congress taking monies from federal. Hence, the money is simply passed through them. And third is the term federal agencies or federal entities, quote unquote. That refers to its agencies. I'm sure you've watched some videos where I go to the USA.gov and I show the list of United States agencies. These guys, right here, A to Z indexes of U.S. government department and agencies. These guys, within the federal regulation title 2 that we're about to read, it will use a very particular term, federal entities or federal agencies. It's referring to these A to Z list of entities that are, by the way, 508 entities also. For those three terminologies, federal agencies, pass-through entities, and non-federal entities, keep those three particular terms in mind as we go through all these legalese and know what they mean, as stated earlier. The first part we're going to read is subsection 200.100. But before that, what does Title II deal with? Title II of Code of Federal Regulation, not Title II of the United States codes. See, some codes of federal regulations intertwine within the same titles, within the same subsections as USC codes, but some do not. When it comes to Title II of Code of Federal Regulation, Title II of Code of Federal Regulation deals with grants and agreement. In other words, the contract that you present, the contract that's accepted from the grantors to give you money, called grant. Agreement is just another cute word for contract. Title II of USC Code deals with Congress rather than grant. So don't make the mistake to think Title II of CFR, Code of Federal Regulation, is the same as Title II of USC. Right here, Title II of United States Codes deals with the Congress, not grants. So to be very clear, to be succinct with these words, and for you to have clarity on what we are looking at, we are not looking at United States codes. We are looking at the Code of Federal Regulation, I've mentioned this in the past, but Code of Federal Regulation is basically created by the Executive Department and most of its agencies. The Executive Department is the CEO that overlooks the money of things. And these are the private laws established as to how the United States and all its extra monies that's laying out there that people are not claiming how it's going to be used through the way you present your contract. Title 2 of CFR, Grants and Agreement. Subsection 200.100. Purpose. This part establishes uniform administrative requirement. Administrative meaning how these agencies are going to disseminate grants to people and other entities. Cost principles and audit requirement for federal awards to non-federal entities as described in 200.101. Federal awarding agencies must not impose additional or inconsistent requirements except as provided in subsection 200.102 and 200.211, or unless specifically required by federal statute, aka unless specifically required by USC, regulations, or executive order. This part provides the basis for its systematic and periodic collection and uniform submission by federal agencies of information on all financial assistance programs to the Office of Management and Budget. I wonder where else we see this term, Office of Management and Budget. This terminology, OMB, or this office, is one that oversees the bank worth of all the forms of the United States on a United States level. When they say you signed the note and you made it the money, what they're speaking of is the fact that there's an office agencies of the United States called Office of Management and Budget that attach monetary value to each of those. That's the reason why, for instance, when you look at IRS forms, good old 8832, you look at the top right, you'll see OMB number. It will give you a series number. This is the series of bond. They're in the particular year of the form, 2002. Have you ever asked yourself, why do these people just create different revisions of forms, 2002, 2003, 2020, 2024? Make no mistake, the year of the revision is tied to the series of bond issued by the Office of Management and Budget. I've went over this office in another video. Similarly, make no mistake, it exists with the passport also. On the bus control number, this term control, I implore you to go, I'm not going to read it for you. Go into a financial dictionary and read the word control. OMB control number, they give you the series of the bond. And the series of bond expires 2025, April 30. At the beginning of the second quarter, aka after the first quarter, April 30th of 2025. Anyway, moving on. Office of Management and Budget. We all know budget deals with money. What else do you budget for? Monies. And they manage it. In a simplified term, this is just an accounting firm as an agency of the United States when it comes to the monies that the United States uses as expense or income. It also establishes federal policies related to the delivery of this information to the public, including through the use of electronic media. Hence, ECFR stands for Electronic Code of Federal Regulation. It prescribes the manner in which the General Service Administration, oh, look at that, another entity that deals with bonds, and these guys have forms particularized to contract and bonds. So are you saying you're going to be using GSA form when it comes to grants? Yep, absolutely. Again, See, I can just tell you these things that you're going to need a bid bond, contract form from the GSA to increase the odds of your grant. See, 9 out of 10 people who apply for grants don't use GSA forms. But when you start to read the regulation for grants, which is what you were looking at here, I showed you Title II deals with grants and agreement. When you start to read the language of legislature that governs how you can get free monies from these people, they start handing the juice to you. They start telling you, look, go use these forms to increase your probability because you're dealing with a federal contract, aka agreement. GSA have bid bonds, contract bonds, and things like that. And it is no accident that they are mentioning these very particular agencies. And it is absolutely no accident that I'm showing this to you, because this is what gives you the upper hand against thousands of people that apply for that same grant during the same time period before the final award determination date is given. This is part of how and why competence separates you from the crowd. It prescribes the manner in which General Service Administration, OMB, meaning Office of Management and Budget, and federal agencies that administer federal financial assistance programs are to carry out their statutory responsibilities, statutory meaning USC's, responsibilities under the Federal Program Information Act. Shows you the USC. B, administrative requirements. Subparts B through D of this part set forth the uniform administrative requirements for grants and cooperative agreements, including the requirements for federal awarding agency management of federal grant program before the federal award has been made, and the requirements federal awarding agencies may impose on non-federal entities in the federal award. Item number C, cost principles. Subpart E of this part establishes principles for determining the allowable costs incurred by non-federal entities under federal awards. Meaning whenever they grant your entity, aka non-federal entities, any award in any amount, they grant you $50K, but that $50K based on the balance sheet that you showed them for that thing that you're saying, hey, I need these monies to do this. That balance sheet shows you need $70K, but they grant you $50K anyway. Whether they're going to give you the full amount you request or partial amount, well, they're telling you subpart E makes that determination. The principles are for the purpose of cost determination and are not intended to identify the circumstances or dictate the extent of federal government participation in the financing of a particular program or project. Meaning, there are principles as to when they give you monies, they have no say in it. In other words, the concept of he who has the goals make the rules does not apply. Besides the fact that, look, just use it for your intended purpose that you've prescribed here and these contracts that you've presented to us, which would be the consideration for us to say, yes, here's the money. And once we say, yes, here's the money, we cannot determine whether we have interest in the outcome or the things that you're creating. That's what the second sentence says. Do you know some people go through third parties, like people go through third parties to create LLCs? Some people go through third parties and accounting firms or lawyer firms to gain grants. And these firms give them trash stipulations that don't even apply, just so they can, line their pockets a little bit. The principles are designed to provide that federal awards bear their fair share of costs recognized under these principles, except where restricted or prohibited by statute. Statute, again, being USC. The USC is particularized to what? The complete 1 hour and 9-minute videos on the Patreon page. Take care. Best of luck.